Good morning. So I am in my office and I am here during the summer to kind of brush up on information content that I'll be covering with my students come fall. So surprisingly, I am here. Most of my colleagues are not. Some people who are teaching classes in the summer, they're here, so that's pretty cool. So what I typically do is to prepare for the next coming semester, I'll go through my textbooks that I require the students to read. I think it's more than fair. If I'm the instructor, I at least need to know what's in the textbook. The crazy part about it, and I don't even like to use that word crazy, so I'll take that back. But the strange thing about it is that I have been doing this for over 15 years, so I have read the same book over and over and over. But it's all good. So I'll go through each chapter and I will highlight some of the areas that I think are essential to that particular chapter. So if you want to come along with me, I will be starting with the psychiatric mental health book because that's my area of specialty. I will then go on to the community health book. I'm all in Elsevier Evolve textbooks. So if you have those textbooks, subscribe because that's what I'll be doing within a week or so. If you have a textbook that's through a different publisher, you can put a comment below, or you can, reach out to me with that particular textbook and I will try to order it. Because as instructors, one perk that we do have is that we can contact publishers and get different books. So I will attempt to do that. Most of my books now are ebooks. So I'll basically put it up on my screen, I'll follow along, highlight certain areas, I'll read it to you, and then I'll go into detail on those particular areas, and I'll just go through each chapter. So that's kind of what I do to prepare for fall semester. So starting with this video, I'm going to give you some tips, 7 different tips on how I advise students to study, how I studied in nursing school. So tip number 1 is to, surprisingly, when you do NCLEX style questions, do those NCLEX style questions with distractions. Welcome. This is Dr. Desiree Nicole. My students call me Professor Sanders, but since you're not my student, you can just call me Desiree. Welcome to my channel. And I got to get this done quick because I have a young person at home and it's their summer break and they're always trying to schedule out my day. So let's get through this. Using distractions to help you actually concentrate is a tip that I tell my students. Number one thing they always tell me is that when they are doing questions at home, no one is around, everybody's quiet, and they take their time. So I always say, like, when you get to the testing area, you always say that it's too loud. So what I mean by that, sometimes the air is blowing, like it's blowing in my office now. Somebody's clicking their pen. Someone's phone is vibrating. So that's always, I know that's a distraction for me. That's a distraction for some people. Other people are literally, I would say reading out loud. I've seen that where I'll have to tell them start reading out loud. You'll have some people like hitting their leg against the floor or whatever. So my point of saying this is start to do NCLEX style questions in like a coffee store or coffee restaurant or little area, or go somewhere where you're maybe sitting outside and people are walking by. Go to the library. So I wouldn't suggest you going to a place where there's tons of distractions, but find an area where there are some distractions because you want to create that environment that you'll be actually taking an exam in. So if you create an environment that's extremely comfortable, you're going to probably say the environment that you're being tested in is totally different. So you're going to feel totally different in that environment. I've seen where students have anxiety from the very beginning. As soon as we start the exam, I see them with anxiety. Sometimes before we even start the exam, they have anxiety. So you want to create an atmosphere where there is some distractions while you're studying. So when you take it in real time, it won't be as bad. Get up and move. You need to get up and move when you are studying. I have studied with the textbook literally in my bed. I can't stay like that. Some people do. I can't. If I have the textbook in my bed, I am going to sleep. So I suggest that you get up and you move. I read 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and then I get up and I pace. I pace back and forth for about 2 or 3 minutes. And then I sit back down and I read some more. And then I pace again. I always encourage my students also to stand up and study versus sitting down. You don't have to do it all the time. But say if you have a chart or something to remember or to review, if you stand up and you are reading over the chart as you're standing up, to me, that's going to help you retain more of the information versus sitting down. You're so comfortable. It's like it's so weird. Our brains kind of slow down when we're sitting down, when we're relaxed. So that's definitely a tip for you just to kind of consider, is to move more and stand up more when you're studying. Objectives, use them. They're in the beginning of your textbooks. Many students will literally pass right past those objectives and introduction and move forward. So what I encourage you to do is use those objectives. With the ebooks, you can literally copy and paste those objectives onto a blank piece of paper. Copy them or write them out. You don't have to write all of them out. Say pick the top 5 or pick 5 that you have no idea what they're referring to. Pick those and search through your chapter to find the answer. So the objectives guide the entire chapter. So if you use the objectives as a way to evaluate yourself, you'll know immediately if this makes sense or not. If you have an objectives and they are usually very broad, says something like explain antipsychotic medications. That's it. That's all the objective says. If you're unable to write out an explanation for that objective, you don't understand the material. If you're not able to do that, if you're not able to write it out, you're not able to understand the material. So many students tell me, I know the material. I read the book. I know the material. And I will literally ask them one question. Tell me something about such and such. And they'll look around and they'll, not know the answer, or they'll give me some basic answer that could be used for any single question. They'll say something about safety. Of course, safety, but that could be used for every single response. So you have to think about how you would answer those objectives in your own words without using, word for word what the textbook says, but are you able to explain and to elaborate to meet that objective, to meet the requirement to say, yes, I understand that objective. To me, that's a great way that I have studied. Like I said, if you don't know how to answer that objective, go to your textbook and find it in your textbook. Reading is a no-brainer. I probably shouldn't even include reading. Your textbooks these days, these ebooks will read the textbook to you. What I suggest is, instead of reading over and over, read and record at the same time. That is a easy way to kind of eliminate so much repetitive reading. So if you read over the summary, read over maybe the first couple of sentences in each paragraph and record it, right? So now throughout your week, you're going to listen to your own recording. So you're listening to your recording of you reading over the sections of that particular chapter. Read over the important highlights and then listen to it later on throughout the week. You can even divide this up in your study group. Have your classmates all choose a chapter to read and then send it to each other. So then you can just listen to their readings. So it's something about listening to words really helped me throughout my nursing school career. So So that's just my 2 cents on reading. You have to read, but you can think of ways to kind of minimize the repetition, but also receive the message at the same time. So this is kind of piggybacking off of what I just said. Listen to your teachers, your instructors, other people on YouTube, other instructors' recordings. Straightforward. I encourage you to use your time wisely. If you're in the car traveling, you're traveling for 30 minutes, 40 minutes, you can use that time to listen to your recordings. Use that time. You don't always have to listen to your instructor. You can always pick another instructor. This is 2023. There's always other instructors out there that you can listen to. You can listen to an instructor who's at a totally different university. If they're talking about the same topic and you're able to comprehend what they are referring to, listen to them. To me, that's something that everyone should be doing. You should use all of the tools that you have. Talk to your teachers. It's, to me, one of the worst things to know is that your student was struggling and they never spoke to you. Talk to your teachers. Once you get your first results from any assignment, from an exam, go and talk to them. And they will tell you, this is maybe how you can look at this differently next time. You'll be so surprised on how many students actually review their assignments and exams with instructors. I would say for me, at the most, 20 to 30% of students actually come and talk to me. Now, I would say even less. I would say more like 10% just randomly talk to me about different subjects, emails me, stay in touch with me. The vast majority of students do not talk to instructors. And to me, that definitely can hurt your grade in so many ways, because you can be in the 2 o'clock in the morning, you're just confused out of nowhere. Why not the very next day go talk to your instructor? Right in front of me, I've seen where students will ask each other questions about stuff that I just said. They'll say, did she say this? And did she say that? And I'm standing right there. All you gotta do is reach out to me and ask me to repeat what I just said. And that would clear up all the confusion. So that's definitely something you should consider, is just talking to your instructor. It will take you probably less than 10 minutes and you'll get a much greater understanding of your material. And lastly is use all of your resources. These different publishers charge hundreds of dollars for these packages that you will receive in nursing school. The packages include so much more than most students use. I've seen it. I've seen the data where students barely use like 20-30% of the materials that they have. I've seen where students just want to get down to it, tell me exactly what's going to be on the exam. That's all I want to look at. That's all I want to study. I know as a student myself, whenever I had questions, whenever I didn't go over certain material the night before, I always got that information wrong on the exam, always. So always use your resources. If you can answer for each chapter, like some of the textbooks will have questions. They'll have maybe 10 to 20 questions for each chapter. Why not just answer all of them? Answer all of them. You don't know, what you don't know. So use the publisher resources to evaluate yourself. Use the publisher resources to elaborate, to explain. There's sometimes charts and tables that students don't use. So use all of these resources that you have. You also have resources around the college. We have like a math tutor that some nursing students don't go to because they feel like, nursing math is totally different. But you still should go to that math tutor. They could possibly answer your question. We have a writing lab that students can go to. We also have a company where you can send in your paper 24/7. You can send them your paper and they'll critique your paper and send it back to you. Most students do not use it. And I know they don't use it because many times they'll communicate with the instructor and say, I saw such and such today. They needed help with this, and I helped them with whatever it may be. So use those resources because they're there to help you. Don't make your life harder than it needs to be. So that's the end of my tips. Those are just some tips that I thought about to help you succeed in nursing school. I received fairly high grades all throughout my different programs, and these are some of the things that I use throughout my programs. These are some things that I suggested to my students. Of course, I can go to sleep tonight and wake up and think of 7 more things that you can also try. So be consistent in what you're doing. If something doesn't work one day, I will still continue to try it for several more days before you just say, okay, that doesn't work for me. And that's kind of where I want to conclude. Like I said, I'm going to be studying over the next week or so. Subscribe if you want to study along with me. I'm starting with psychiatric mental health nursing, and then I will go on from there. Have a good day.